Bible upon you on your Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hashabath, Bashalawam, Towada, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the Sabbath in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Ha'ayim A'ad, Asherayim Akkad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Ayanyam Ya O Harayim Mayan Yabawa Isaiah Yabawa Mayahawa Shaisha Shamayim Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia, Yala'a, Yanawum, Shashamarka, Hana, La'a, Yanawum, Wala'a, Yayashun, Shashuamar, Yasharallah, Yahweh, Shemaria, Yahweh, Tazalia, Ayel, Yad, Yum Yun Ya, Yawamum, Hashemash, La'a Hakaya, Wayarat, La'a Balayala, Yahweh, Yashamaria, Mako, Ra, Yashamar, Napasha, Yahweh, Yashamar, Hawalakya, Wabawaya, Ma'aitha, Wa'aid, Iwulam, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Towada, Amen. Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes into the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen. Shema Yasharallah, hear, O Israel. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Chad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Chad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Echad. Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one Lord. Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abi Yanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Chodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malakwithka, Saba'a, Ratazawanka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Ka, Bashamayim, Lathananawa, Lakam, Yawum, Za, Wasalaklanawa, Kabawathnawa, Kasalaknawa, Kabawathyanawa, Wala'a, Habiyanawa, O, Nasayawan, Abo, Hawashinawa, Marai, Kriya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha'ala, Wahatha Parath, La'aywalam, Amen. Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Ha'ai Shira Matazawath, the Ten Commandments. La'ah, Yahaya, Lakah, Alahayim, Akarim, Alpanya. La'ah, Thaisha, Lakah, Paso, Wala'ah, Tha'ibadam. La'ah, Thalakwakath, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alahayaka, Lashua. Zakar, Ath, Hayawum, Hashabath, La Kodashwa. Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka. La'ah, Daratazak, La'ah, Thana'ah, La'ah, Thakanab, La'ah, Tha'ina, Shakur, La'ah, Thakamad, Ko, Asherah, Lara'ayaka, Aman. Exodus 20th chapter and the 3rd verse. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, meaning murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Aman. Yeshabwa, be seated. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Asherah, Nathon Nawa, Par Yahagapin, Thoara Aman, La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Ath, Yasha'Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. I mod upon your Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Opening prayers. Barakatha Yahweh, Hagadol, Rakhawam, Abiyah, Wanara'a, Yawan, Malak, Shol, Shamayim, Ba'arataza, Wako, Dabaryam, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Adawanawa, Ahabnawa, Hapala, Yawaitaza, Yahushai. Zakarnawa, Yahweh, Baratazawan, Naimka, Yasha'Allah, Izarnawa, Bana, Wasa, Yasha'Allah, O, Nanawa, Yum Yum, Aitha, Kayawamyum, Makodam, Baba Kusha, Shalak, Mayaka'Allah, Wahatazawadak, Alahayim, La, Maganawa, Rapanawa, Washama, Alnawa, Baikur, Shalak, Haroka, Sho, Yahushai, Lanawa, Lalamanawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Sabawana, Wada Ith, Sho, Dabarka, Bahasham, Yahushai, Thawada, Thamyad, Wa'iwalam, Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel. Most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever. So be it. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hathawara. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Awur, Lara Awath. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Quran, Ha'ayol, La Korah, Ha'ain. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayath, Lamashak, Yasha Allah. Shabwa, be seated. Right, Shalom, Shalom, Ashar Shabbat, happy Sabbath, brothers and sisters. Throughout the four corners of the earth, those that's watching today on the live stream here at HYK, located here in Philadelphia, PA, Germantown Avenue. Shalom to those who are listening on the teleconference line, as well as any brothers and sisters that's going to be also physically participating. Shalom, Shalom. Hopefully the Most High has given you a good spirit on this day, that you're not holding any harborings or any burdens
or any ill to anybody on this day. It's a day of rest from all your pleasures, all your works, all your troubles, everything that you can cast your burdens upon the Most High and come before Him and worship on His day. Acknowledge Him, go through His Spirit by reading the scriptures, prayers, going out there doing good deeds on this day. These are some of the things that you want to intertwine yourself with on the Lord's day, and not so much, worldly endeavors and burdens and things of that nature. So again, happy Sabbath, Most High's will. You are in good spirits. Sometimes you may not be physically good, but you might be spiritually good, right? Meaning that your mind is still in a good space, even though you have some other things going on. So Lord's will, those are the things that is consuming our mind. This is, like I mentioned, Hayah Shvala Kanas. For those who are newly listening in, those who are newly watching us on the live stream, on the replay, this is the congregation of Israel. When we say Israel, the word Israel, according to the scriptures, is a prince or a princess of the Most High God, right? That's the name that was given to our forefather Jacob when he wrestled with the angel for a blessing. And that name became what we now hold as a nation of people that came from out of his posterity, his 12 sons, and we became 12 tribes or 12 nations that are all combined into one people, right? So those of us whose ancestors on their father's side, going back at least 3 or 4 generations, if you can prove it. On one hand, those who are known as the so-called Hispanics that are scattered throughout North, Central, and South America, the islands of the Caribbean, as well as throughout the Four Corners. If you were those whose indigenous fathers on your father's side were already here prior to the conquistadors, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Spaniards, French coming over here to the Americas, then you represent a portion of the lost tribes of the nation of Israel. If also your forefathers were the ones who came over during the times of the transatlantic slave trade, right? Some of us have gone back and done the research, and they seen on the registry where they kind of had our names and changed our names to slave masters' names, right? And we now realize that those of us were the ones who came over from the coast of West Africa to serve slavery throughout North, Central, and South America, as well as throughout the world, primarily going up into Europe and the United Kingdom, right? And other areas, even throughout Africa, right? Because then we were also a part of the sub-Saharan slave trade, where the Arabs and some of the other Hamitic or indigenous African people sold us and had us as slaves throughout those regions as well. So those descriptions and those people represent the 12 lost tribes of the nation of Israel that the Bible is meant for, to awaken and put the spirit in us so that we can come and be refreshed to who we are as a people. It's imperative in these last days that we get the cloak from over our eyes, the wool put from over our eyes, because we have been under mysticism, right? We have been under miseducation. We have been taught different religions and a lot of things to keep us from our true power, right? We was reading in the class this evening pertaining to ancient Tyre. And if you missed it, Most High's will go through it again. But we were speaking about the prophecies that you read about in Ezekiel, the 27th chapter and the 28th chapter, how it shows you it was a foreshadowing of those same type spirit that Esau would have in the last days. And you'll see that ancient Tyre is situated just like how America is, on opposite sides or in the midst of waters or seas, and is the king merchant throughout the world. All merchandise goes through him. So when you read Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, and you read Ezekiel, the 27th chapter, it's speaking about ancient Tyre, but it's really talking about modern day Tyre. And one of the things that the Lord spoke about Tyre or Tyrus back then was the certain aspect and things that they deal with. And it touched me this morning because I saw it on the news, right? I'm going to read this again. When you go to the book of Ezekiel, before we get into today's Sabbath service lesson, when you go to the book of Ezekiel, Isaiah, the 46th chapter. Go to the book of Isaiah, the 46th chapter. Sorry, 47. So Isaiah chapter 47, and I'm going to read from 12 to 13. So in Isaiah chapter 47, 12 to 13, we read this evening. It goes into what what's the spirit that's behind Tyre, mainly Babylon, in these last days. It says, stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries where thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be that thou shalt be able to profit, if so be that thou mayest prevail. So it's letting you know that Babylon, modern day Babylon, was wrapped into a lot of sorceries and witchcraft from its youth, from its inception, right? When it became a birth of a nation, this is what they were dealing with. That's why we spoke about last night. The vice president's living quarters is at the Naval Observatory, right? Where they look at the stars and gaze and try to deal with astrology, right? Try to foretell the future. They deal with these spirits on the left-hand side to be their guide on what things they should do, right? It says, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. So they go and get counsel from these different type spirits, right? They're not going to, a therapist. They're not going to somebody, that has a room and you lie down on the couch. No, they're trying to tap into that spirit on the left-hand side to give them inspiration or guidance on what they should do. Not the Most High God, but they go to astrologers, stargazers, necromancers, and all of these different type of mediums to get that guidance, to get that spirit to direct their paths, right? It says, let now thy astrologers, thy stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So that's what's going to come, what's happening now in the last days. And the Lord is mocking them, saying, won't you go now and go see if those spirits that you was dealing with can now help you about what's going to happen in the last days. Now, this morning, I didn't know because I don't really track it or follow like that. I never cared for it. But they said that this year, well, I don't know, this month or whatever, is the 100th year anniversary of Disney, right? So all the Disney movies and Mickey Mouses and all these different types of things, it's the 100th year anniversary of it becoming an institution, a company, and pushing out certain things. Now, you may say, okay, what's the big deal with Disney and why is it, such a big deal? Well, from a child, from its inception, like you just read here, from the youth of modern day Babylon, this is what they have been dealing with, right? And we didn't really kind of pay attention to some of the things that they was dealing with back then, right? So when you look at these types of things, right? So you see a image right now of Mickey Mouse, right? Let me see if I have this shared, right? There's an image there of Mickey Mouse, and you see in his hand is a wand. And what people know the symbol of the wand is used for magic, right? So all the time while we was watching all these cartoons and we was watching certain things, we was already being bred into dealing with witchcraft, sorcery, and magic. That's why a lot of these different types of shows, from Harry Potter and all of them, they try to target the youth. They try to target us as kids so that we can be caught up and wrapped up into these things. But it goes even further than just what we see on TV, because this is where they're getting their inspiration from Satan on the left-hand side to now start pushing witchcraft and sorceries within the society, right? And now it's also transformed, pushed down into those, who are subject to them as a people or as a nation. So this is something that when we just read this last night in the scriptures, right? It wasn't something that I even paid attention to that's going on now. But now when I watched it on the news this morning, I was like, wow, this is, what, as they say, right before your eyes, in plain sight, and really didn't pay attention to it. A lot of the youth today don't pay attention to it. Towards the end of class last night, Elder Zaquan was going into, the things that was going on at the Grammys and the things that was going on at the Super Bowl, and how there's a lot of mysticism and there's a lot of signs and symbols and colors and things that happening, but most people don't pay attention to it because we so wrapped up into the entertainment of it all, right? But now when that wand is cast over you and you are now under the spell, you're not going to be able to decipher because you are under the spell, right? Like I said in the class a few months ago, words mean something. It carries a heavy connotation. When we read the scriptures, we get the Holy Spirit on us, right? That's what the Most High wants. That once we read and we get the understanding and we get the wisdom and the practicality based on what we're reading, a spirit is supposed to come on us, right? All of us have a spirit that we're born with, but we want the Holy Spirit to now overshadow and cover us like when we read in the scriptures. But when they deal with these other things, these other books, right, this other knowledge, dealing with all these other false ideologies, there's a spirit that comes on an individual as well, right? That's what we don't want. We want to try to shake those things off. We want to cleanse ourselves from those type spirits and now come into the Holy Spirit. That's why Christ said this in St. John chapter 15. St. John chapter 15 and verse 3. It says, now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you, right? Because Christ spoke of things pertaining to the scriptures, things that the Most High has given us as history, as prophecy, right? As law, as commandments, fruits of the spirit, right? These things Yahushua was teaching to the people. And when they received it, now they began to become clean from all of those other garbage and those other type spirits that they had on them. That's why when you read the Bible, it speaks about a man and he had spirits on him called legion. There was a whole bunch of different spirits that was on him. Prior to us coming into this truth, we was like that. We had all different kind of spirits that was on us in our bodies or in our spiritual mind. So this day, some of us still have a remnant of certain different types of spirits that we still trying to fight off, right? We're not 100% clean, right? We still have little dormants of that old man, that old spirit that's still hanging on. But for the most part, with the Holy Spirit being the majority that's encompassing you, you can fight off those things. So this is what Christ was wanting us to do, to hear the word of the Most High so that we can fight off all that magic and that mysticism and all that things that we watch throughout the day, right? We watch these movies, we listen to these songs, we read these articles, we on social media, looking at different videos of certain things. Those things will have a spirit and an effect on you. Got to be able to understand that it's gonna happen. But if you stay in here and come back and get refreshed, you can fight off those types of spirits. So now it's a battle that's going on. That's why Paul talks about we're not waging a war against flesh and blood. It's spiritual, because before anything is put into action, it has to be a thought. A spirit comes over you before you act. If you want to go to the refrigerator, you got to think and say, well, I'm hungry. The thought comes in, my stomach, let me get up and go and do something. So the thoughts that come in your mind that registers is what triggers you to act and say and do certain things. So you want to have these thoughts in your mind. You want to meditate on these things more often than the other things, because if not, then you're going to still be caught up in the mysticism, like how we have some of our brothers and sisters when you read the scriptures, and the majority of us right now in these last days, right? So this is the key, that we got to pay attention to the signs that's before us and then try to tap back into the spirit of the Bible in order to be our defense, right? Today's Sabbath service lesson, as is on the ticker, we're going to be in the books of the Apocrypha, 2 Maccabees chapter 13 and 14. I mentioned this before. We're towards the end of the chapter. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be going into a series of solemn assemblies or days of reverence as it pertains to the Day of Judas and Purim. With the Day of Judas, we're going to be reading certain aspects of that during the Sabbath service, and we're going to go through it, but we're going to go even deeper on it during the times of the Day of Judas, because that's what that day is for, right? But we're going to go through it judiciously and expeditiously, as we always do when it pertains to the Sabbath service lesson. So Most High's will, I always try to make sure that the scriptures are fulfilling, right? You walk away having been fed with something that you can digest and have enough energy to carry on, that is also joyous. The Bible should make you, go through all the series of emotions, right? It should make you happy. It should make you sad. It should make you cry. It should make you do certain things, because all of those emotions are also in the Bible. Yahushua wept, right? Some people were afraid. Some people were fervent. We go through a series of emotions as we read about the brothers and sisters, our forefathers and foremothers, and what they went through, and it should also touch us, right? So you always want to walk away with something when you read the scriptures. Hopefully you pray to that, there's something that you read this before, but you got some more information or insight on it. All right. So we're going to go into Second Maccabees, right? And if you remember, First Maccabees, the Second Maccabees, the book of First Maccabees pretty much goes through all of the family of the Maccabees, from Mattathias all the way to Simon, right? And even his son, John Arcanius, when you read the scriptures, right? First Maccabees goes through a whole suite. When you get in the Second Maccabees, it primarily deals with Judas, right? Judas Maccabees, and it goes a little bit more deeper into some of the timelines of what happened with him, similar to the gospel, where you'll have, all of the men, the four men that wrote the gospel of the times of Yahushua, they'll all write up certain things going to his crucifixion. But like, say, John, he will go a little bit more in depth about certain aspects than what Matthew went through. They all touch on it, but some just may have been around. The Spirit moved them that they write a little bit more details about certain aspects so that we can get the full picture based on the different vantage points. All right. So this is where we are in the book of Second Maccabees, chapters 13 and 14. And I am Kahano Priest Samak that's going to preside over today's Sabbath service lesson. All right. So we're going to start page 153 in the Red Apocrypha, chapter 13, Second Maccabees. All right. So it reads, it says, in the 149th year, it was told Judas that Antiochus Epiphanes was coming with a great power into Judea, right? So I always point out that it's a good thing that the scribes or those who recorded this information left even timelines, right? So when you read in the 149th year, right? This is in the 149th year of the Greek Empire, right? So you can now go, if you are a historian, you can go into deep depth as it pertains to the Greek Empire. And then they have a timeline. So in their timeline, they're most likely going to give you exploits and certain things from the Greek perspective. But now you can mirror that up with what we're reading here in scripture, right? During the 149th year, Judas was around during this time fighting for and defending the nation of Israel. And then you have Antiochus Epiphanes. So you can line it up. And as you line it up based on those events, then you could also now see it from the Israel perspective, what we was battling, what we was going through from our vantage point, right? We was going into this evening during the class, how during the times of Alexander the Greek, when he was fighting against the men of Tyre or the kingdom of Tyre, that chariots came and blew open one of the walls so that the Greeks can go in and take out Tyrus. But then it says, not only was that recorded by the Greeks, but it was also recorded by the Hamites, the Tyrrhenians, that they said the same thing happened, right? So you got now two testimonies. So now something like this is where we can also get from their vantage point of what was going on, and we get from the Most High, from our ancient forefathers, what we see here in Scripture and how it aligns, right? Because a lot of times people want to look at the Bible as just some book of just, fictional stories or things just to inspire you. But this is historical accounts that you now can line up with world events, world history, things, people go to college to kind of get this understanding, and you're getting this for free. The Most High has all this information in the Bible recorded, and it's free, freely given through the Spirit of the Most High. Put that asterisk there, through the Spirit of the Most High, because even though it's in the Bible, you may not understand what it's really talking about unless the Most High allows you to get that understanding through a prophet or a seer or a teacher or something like that, or through a vision, right? So I'm going to read verse 1 again. In the 149th year, it was told Judas that Antiochus Epiphanes was coming with a great power into Judea, right? So now his father, Antiochus, was the one who died having that disease that the Most High put upon him because, he was trying to come and destroy Israel. And the Lord put the plague on him, incurable disease, and then he had a change of heart, right? Subsequently, after a while, even after the change of heart, he died. Jupiter is his son, but his son is young. His son is like maybe early teens. So he's not really, abrupt on what needs to happen as being a king over the whole realm, over that whole region. So Lysias was the one that was left as his guardian. So now after this father Antiochus Epiphanes died, Jupiter is now the one who's supposed to be next in line, but he is now running around with Lysias. Lysias is now his protector and the one who's taking care of everything. But at the time when we read this before, Antiochus left Philip back in the realm to take care of everything until his son was able to take over the reins. So you have two different areas where two different people is now taking claim of the throne. You got to pay attention to that, right? We went through this about 2 months ago. So again, in the 149th year, it was told Judas that Antiochus Jupiter was coming with a great power into Judea, and with him Lysias, his protector and ruler of his affairs. So this is the man that Antiochus Epiphanes made as his guardian, right? And now they're going out and is letting you know that he is his protector and the ruler of all his affairs, right? So Antiochus Jupiter is pretty much in the back burner, right? He's just the face, but it's really Lysias that's calling the shots. Having either of them a Grecian power of footmen and 110,000, and horsemen 5,300, and elephants 22, and 300 chariots armed with hooks, right? So if you see in certain old movies like Ben-Hur and all of them, and they got their chariots, they'll have all different types of swords and devices and things on them to kind of trap the people who are on foot as they riding by. So that's what it's talking about. They had hooks on their chariots, right? So it's kind of like a battle array as they're running through the battlefield to easily just, takes people's legs off or kill them. It says in verse 3, Menelaus also joined himself with them, and with great dissimulation encouraged Antiochus, not for the safeguard of the country, but because he thought to have been made governor. So you now have a Levite, an Israelite, who's now become a traitor to his people and made an alliance with the Greeks, right? So now he's being somewhat of an advisor to Antiochus Epiphanes and Lysias to try to give them counsel and give them the upper hand as it pertains to our affairs. Not because he really wanted the Greeks to now be a populous or a great empire. He wanted to become high priest. That was it, right? He wanted to be governor and he wanted to have a position over the children of Israel. That's all he's doing it for, opportunity, right? It says, but the King of Kings moved Antiochus' mind against this wicked wretch. So the scriptures tell you where the Lord says that he controls, our hearts and our minds. He can make a person's heart change towards you to show you favor or to show you harm. We always read in the book of Jeremiah, I think it's 15. It's either 15 or 11 or 11:15. Right. So this is Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 11. It says, the Lord said, verily it shall be well with thy remnant. Verily I will cause the enemy to entreat thee well in the time of affliction, in the time of evil and in the time of affliction. So the Most High can put the spirit on our enemies, Esau, the heathens, at certain times where they would have a change of heart. Their natural born instinct is to dislike us, is to hate us, is going to cause harm to us, as we've seen throughout the different empires in history. But for the remnant, for the chosen, for the elect, right? Even for us as a nation at certain points in times, the Most High can now put a spirit on a few of them to entreat us well, to show us favor, right? And that's what the Lord did on a small scale and large scale, right? For us coming up out of this captivity. So on the flip side, where the Lord can now have someone show you favor, the Most High can now change a person's heart to now have you, to now show you ill or be wrath with you, right? And that's what they're doing with this man, Menelaus, who's now trying to become an advisor for opportunity to Antiochus Jupiter. And the Lord put the spirit in Antiochus where now he don't look at him the same way. right? He now shows ill will towards Menelaus. So now it reads again in verse 4. But the King of Kings, speaking about the Most High, moved Antiochus's mind against this wicked wretch. And Lysias informed the king that this man was the cause of all mischief, so that the king commanded to bring him unto Berea and to put him to death, as the manner is in that place. Right? So at this time, now the spirit has now flipped against Menelaus, and the spirit is telling them, listen, you the cause for us going through all this turmoil with these Israelites, with this man Judas, right? He's running rampant, killing all my soldiers, killing my army, my military. Every time I raise up a captain of the host, he goes and takes them down or puts them to flight. It's all because of you. You the one who's coming and feeding us all this knowledge. This is the type of things that's now going on. And they said, you know what? We're going to put him to death. Bring him to Berea and to this certain place, and we're going to now go and kill him. Right? That's like you read in the New Testament where it speaks about Golgotha, right? That was a place where you went to go crucify certain individuals. That's where Yahushua was crucified at, right? So this is now what they're going to do in this time with Menelaus, right? It says in verse 5, now there was in that place a tower of 50 cubits high, full of ashes, and it had a round instrument which on every side hang down over into the ashes. And whosoever was condemned of sacrilege or had committed any other grievous crime, there did all men thrust them into death. Such a death it happened that wicked man to die, not having so much as burial in the earth, and that most justly, right? So now here it is, right? The common way for those who did sacrilege against the Greeks, right, against their gods, or who committed any type heinous crimes. So they're looking at what he had done was a heinous crime to now cause them to enter in these types of wars, and they're not getting the benefit, right? They're not prospering. So they now went and took him to this place where they had a device that hung over an area, and they had these things that's hanging over these ashes, and that's where they're going to now go and kill him, right? Now, it's not that that's why that's happening, because he was giving them ill advice. It's about to kind of give you an insight as to why the Most High put this on him. It says, verse 8, for inasmuch as he committed many sins about the altar, whose fire and ashes were holy, he received his death in ashes. So the same way he committed certain atrocities in the temple, or once the holy place at the altar, the Most High now made him become a sacrifice, where they hung him over the ashes, where it was burning fire, and he burned to death, and his body went and died right there in the ashes. He could not be buried because he had been burnt up, right? Now, why did this happen? Go back to 2 Maccabees, the 5th chapter, because it speaks about the things that he did about the altar, meaning within the temple, right? He was not going to go away scot clean from what he had done a little bit aforetime. So 2 Maccabees chapter 5 and verse 15. It says, yet was he not content with this, but presumed to go into the most holy temple of all the world. Menelaus, that traitor to the laws and to his own country, being his guide, right? So now here it is, where you have Antiochus Epiphanes, Jupiter's father, who wanted to now continue his onslaught, and he said, you know, he determined to go into the temple. Menelaus was the one who guided him and led him into the most holiest temple, right? Where only Levites and those who come out of the line of Aaron were supposed to go and deal with. But now he brings a heathen in there. You can't even have an Ephraimite or a Judite go up into the temple in this fashion, but this is what he did, right? It says, and taking the holy vessels with polluted hands and with profane hands, pulling down the things that were dedicated by other kings to the augmentation and glory and honor of the place, he gave them away, right? So this is what Antiochus Epiphanes went away with, but it went because Menelaus was his guide to take him throughout the circuits of the temple, right? With unholy hands, with profane and defiled hands, he took him into the temple. Who was there? Menelaus, right? So now he's going through there. The altar is there, all different kind of things that kings had offered up as a sacrifice to the Most High. He now went and touched and had dalliance in the circus of the court of the temple to do these things, and the Lord didn't forget. So now as we come back to 2 Maccabees 13 and 7 and 8 again, now it's justified. It's not because of what the actual Jupiter and Lysias was saying was his fault. It was because of what he had done back then. The Most High now used this opportunity to now cause his fate to fall victim to being burnt with ashes. I'm going to read 7 again. Such a death it happened that wicked man to die, not having so much as burial in the earth, and that most justly. For inasmuch as he had committed many sins about the altar, which we just read, whose fire and ashes were holy, talking about the altar of burnt offerings and the things sacrifice that was given, he received his death in ashes. So he himself became a sacrifice, right? It says, verse 9, now the king came with a barbarous and haughty mind to do far worse to the Jews than that had been done in his father's time. Now, if you remember what we read in First Maccabees, that whole first 3 chapters, Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter, Antiochus Epiphanes, his father, did some heinous crimes, right? I mean, at this point, we are already within the Greek customs. We already had people like Menelaus and traitors to our nation that now went and joined alliances with them. We already had the temple that was filled with prostitutes and unclean animals and an altar put upon our altar. We already had it where on the Sabbath day, we was forbidden to keep the Sabbath day holy. We was forbidden to keep the high holy days. And if you did, you was murdered, right? All of these types of things and many more had already happened during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. But now here it is during the time of Antiochus Jupiter, his son. He said he wanted to make it far worse than what his father did upon the children of Israel. So when we talk about, slavery, we're doing ourselves an injustice because we usually only talk about the 400 years of when we over here in the Americas. But it goes further back than that, right? We don't include these things because we're not taught that we are the people that these things happen to. We only get, a portion of the picture, right? A fraction of the whole picture, because during this time, that was us, right? When we knew who we were, we wasn't bothering nobody and keeping the laws of the Most High, and they murdered and massacred us. So now when we read this, that he wanted to do far worse than what his father did, that goes into the spirit and heart of how they viewed us, right? And what kind of hatred, perpetual hatred that they've had for us since the time of the birth of our forefathers, right? So when we look at, today's time, they want us just to forgive and forget. No other people has been told that. Amalek or the Jewish community is not being told to forget what happened to them during the time of the Holocaust, right? Now they have it where they're trying to change the history. They're changing the textbooks, right? We're talking about the 400 years just being a snippet of what happened to us. But even in that, they want to take that and remove that from the next generation that's coming up so that they can't read about those things. They don't want to be held accountable and liable for those actions. Because if they now are held accountable, or because if you remove those things, we can't speak about reparations no more. We can't speak about 40 acres and a mule no more because it's not taught. It's not fresh in our minds. So these things, as we read this history, right, this was now even before the 1600s. This was before Christ that these things happened to us at this time. We didn't even get to what the Romans did. We didn't speak about what Nero and those guys did, right? Titus and his son. We didn't get there yet. This is still going on prior to what we're talking about in these last days. And we're still seeing remnants of it today in 2023, right? We're seeing certain things in the news about what's still happening to us as a nation, singular, just us, right? So the same way how the Most High put that fate on Menelaus because of the ill that he did, the Most High already said he has a judgment for Edom as well as the other nations for what they have done during this time, and then before, and then after, leading up to right now. Verse 10, it says, which things when Judas perceived, he commanded the multitude to call upon the Lord night and day, that if ever at any other time he would now also help them from being at the point to be put from their law, from their country, and from the holy temple. So some things, most things, especially when it pertains to things like this, we have to now call upon the Most High, right? Salakia, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we're back, right? So Judas is advising the people that they now need to pray night and day fervently, right? Because if he's looking to do worse than what his father did, we're going to have the Most High, the King of Kings, the creator of the world, to now come in and to be our reward, be our defense, right? Send the angels down to come help fight for us. Change the spirit on these individuals so that they don't come at us that way. It's the same thing for us. You know, you get up in the morning, go to bed at night, you got to pray for good fortune, pray for protection, pray for guidance. The things that you can't control, pray that the Most High intervenes and deals with those things, right? That was something that they were faced with, a life and death situation. Some of us right now are not faced with life and death situations based on the same things that we compare what we're reading right now. But every day is a life and death situation when we step outside. We don't know what we're going to entertain, what we're going to encounter when we go out, right? So it's always one of those things where we come and pray to the Most High. So we pray to the Most High that he come in and keep us within the law, keep us within the nation, and keep us as the elect of the Lord. That's what we want in these last days, right? Protect our homes, our families, keep us in these commandments, right? Keep us as a part of the 144, the 1/3, so that we can make it in the end. We got to pray on those things and be fervent. Verse 11. And that he would not suffer the people that had even now been a little refreshed to be in subjection to the blasphemous nations, right? So we had a little bit of wins, right? That's what it's talking about when it says, and that he would not suffer the people that had even now been but a little refreshed. So sometimes when you read throughout the Maccabees, Judas was getting certain wins, right? He was defeating and running them off, but the war wasn't over, right? The whole war wasn't over. We know over time we're going to lose the battle, right? The Greeks are going to now rise up and become that power, and they're going to conquer us. Then the Romans are going to come, and we're going to be subject to them as a people. But we had little times where the Lord raised up a savior, Judas, his brother Jonathan, Simon, right? His first starting with Mattathias, that they gave us opportunities to get little wins and be refreshed, going and rededicating the temple back to the Most High, so that now we still have a place of worship. But then they still coming. It didn't stop, right? It says, verse 12. So when they had all done this together, meaning praying together, and besought the merciful Lord with weeping and fasting and lying flat upon the ground 3 days long, Judas, having exhorted them, commanded they should be in a readiness, meaning be on guard. So for 3 days straight with fasting, like what you read about during the time of Esther in the 4th chapter, right? When Haman was now pushing the Persian government and Artaxerxes and the rest of those that was throughout Shushan to now turn against the children of Israel and to go and kill them and murder them. They fasted for 3 days, no water, no food, praying to the Most High for guidance and protection. So this is what they was doing the same time, right? They are now doing the same thing. And it said that he was lying flat. When you read the Bible, there's different ways to pray. You can pray standing with your hands up to the Lord. You can pray lying flat, right? Some was sitting, right? You can pray in different fashions and forms depending on your spirit, right? We can do a class on that one day too, as far as for going through all the precepts on you know, how to pray, what to pray, when to pray, right? The scriptures talk about, you know, praying 3 days. You know, some men pray 3 days as a certain time of the day. It's the best time to pray. We can read through all that and go into a class. But here, For this period of time, they prayed 3 days, and he was lying flat on the ground for that period of time, and then exhorted them that everybody be on guard and be ready. Verse 13, and Judas, being apart with the elders, determined, before the king's host should be enter into Judea and get the city, to go forth and try the matter in fight by the help of the Lord. Right? So they said, we're not even going to allow him to enter into the city. We're going to try to meet him on the outskirts. We're going to try to fight him before he gets there and have the Lord come and help fight with us. Verse 14. So when he had committed all to the creator of the world and exhorted his soldiers to fight manfully, even unto death, for the laws, the temple, the city and country, and the commonwealth, he camped by Modin. Right? So sometimes you got to really stir up the hearts of the minds of the people. You got to really be in the mind state that you might not come out of this, but you're defending and you're fighting for the Most High and his law, and you're fighting for your people, you're fighting for the temple. But sometimes in war, there's casualties. But how would you want to be remembered? How do you want to go out? Do you want to go out as someone who did not want to put himself in the mix? You want to defend his people and get the honor of the Most High? Or do you want to be a person who was afraid and stayed back, or aligned themselves to the heathen like Menelaus did, or the other brother Alchemist did when we read the next chapter, right? And you have an ill name. There's certain men that died in battle that had a glorious and righteous name. And then we know that in time to come, you're going to be raised up, reincarnated, and the Most High can show you blessings or fortune because of it, right? He can show you favor because of what you've done before. So this is what Judas had to now put into the minds of the people, that we got to fight unto death for the Most High, for the laws, for our country, for the temple, right? Because what else is there to do? If we give in, we're going to be slaves and servants. And we see what happens when we are slaves, right? They make a mockery, they ravish us, they do all kind of things to us. They change our minds and they're making us believe that we're who we are not. So all this can happen if you stay fervent and you fight unto the death. That's what Judas was trying to inspire the men of that time. Verse 15. And having given them the watchword to them that were with him, so like that they were about him, victory is of the Most High God, right? So we can't say that we did it because we had better swords than them, or we trained better, we did more bench presses and push-ups, right? We can run the mile in less than 2 minutes, or whatever the case may be. None of that is what gives us victory. It's the Most High, right? And anything we do, when you read that in 1 Corinthians 11 chapter, this tells you that whether you eat, whether you drink, whatever you do, give all to the glory of the Most High God. So Judas knew that victory is of the Most High God. It was not because of him. Even though he was a vessel that was raised up as a savior by the Most High to deliver Israel, he always gave acknowledgement that it was of the Most High. It says, with those most valiant and choice young men, he went into the king's tent by night, and slew in the camp about 4,000 men, and the chiefest of the elephants, with all that were upon him. So he covertly, went in by night when they least expected it, and took out a good portion of their forces before they can now rise up and come into the city of Judea. Verse 16. And at last they filled the camp with fear and tumult, and departed with good success, right? So once the Greeks at that time, that was with Antiochus, Jupiter, and Lysias, when they realized what had just happened, that they now was blitzed and they got certain portions of their forces taken out unawares, it's put a spirit of fear throughout their camp, right? And now they was not able to go and enter into the campaign that they wanted to by coming into Judea and really doing worse than what was done before, right? So that was suppressed, and they got good success after praying to the Most High, blowing up the ram's horn, because you know that's in the book of Numbers, the 10th chapter, and you read different testimonies in the book of Maccabees that when Judas went out to war, he also blew up the ram's horn, because that's in the law. Doesn't say it every time, but we do know because it mentions it, and he was a man of the Lord, a Levite at that, That's what they was doing. They also blew up the ram's horn because it was a sign between us and the Most High, right? So all these things, when we do them according to the Lord's will, the Lord will acknowledge it and come and be our defense and show us favor, right? It says in verse 17, this was done in the break of the day, right, towards the morning, because the protection of the Lord did help him, right? Again, it comes back to the Most High. When you put your trust in the Most High, when you think that the Most High is the one that's now going to give you the victory and not you yourself, and that's in anything, right? You can look at it from any type of perspective. If you put your reliance on the Lord, that becomes a part of your practice, right? You don't only want to do it when you need help. The car broke down, you just lost your job, right? You fighting with your spouse and she leaves and let me go action. No, you want to have a good constant relationship with the Most High, where you can do like how you have a family member, your parents, you can just go and talk to and communicate with. That's how we want to be with the Lord. That's how we want to be with Yahweh Shai, right? Not only for times that you need something. You want to be grateful. You want to acknowledge and thank the Most High for just everything, or just converse and say, you know what, I was happy that I was able to do this. That prayer conversation allows us to stay in tune, right? Night, day, right? Certain time periods throughout the day, in order to build that bond. Because if you don't, something else is going to come in and remove that bond between you and the Most High, and then you gravitate to that, right? That happens. Verse 18, now when the king had taken a taste of the manliness of the Jews, he went about to take the holds by policy. So when he realized and said, yo, these guys are just not no slouches. These are not like some of these other heathens that we can just go in and just, bogart and just come in and take. These guys a little bit more manlier. They got a little bit more might and more fight in them than the others want to. So we got to change it up. We can't come that way. We can't come with aggression. We got to try to come through policy, right? We got to come with, laws and diplomacy. That's what you see Esau even still does today. It's all about diplomacy. We're going to come and sit down and have a conversation, right? Let's have a conversation. And in that conversation, you're now looking at tactics. You're looking at body language. You're checking out the scenery. You're seeing how they function. You're really trying to tap into them, right? And get them to get their guard down. And then once the guard down through policy, then they come in and swoop and take you out. That's how Esau operates, right? Through policy. Let me see if this is in here. I think it's in the book of Daniel. Go to the book of Daniel. I think it's the 8th chapter. Right. Daniel chapter 8 and verse 24. Right. This was actually, I'm going to start at 21. Right. This is what Daniel, before the Greeks joined the Babylonian Empire, right, before they was even thought of that there was going to be a power, he had already prophesied that this was going to be one of their tactics that they was able to use. And it continues on to today. Daniel chapter 8 and verse 21. It says, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, right? The rough goat being Greece, the first king really talking about Alexander the Great, right? Now, when you jump down to verse 24, it says, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, right? So he should be a mighty kingdom, but it's not because of his own might. It's because he got that from another source, dealing with Satan. It says, and he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper and practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. That's what we're reading about in the Maccabees. That happened during the time of Alexander, going on through the different Antiochuses, right? He destroyed wonderfully. Alexander went and got the whole realm, that whole region, in a short period of time compared to other nations that now rise up and become the kingdom or the empire over a vast region. Then it says, and shall prosper and practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Verse 25, there it is. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, right? So policy is not only just diplomacy. It's not only just, democracy. That's a good portion of it. But like we was talking about in the beginning of the class and what we talked about, I mean, the Sabbath service class, when we spoke about in this evening, they deal with other things as well. They deal with mysticism, sorcery, right? They deal with other things to now also get you to now to fall in line with what they want, their practices, right? That's why I spoke about at the beginning of the Sabbath service class that this is the 100th year of Disney. So now when you look at Disney, they came through their policy. We're going to give them something that they can start now becoming conditioned, washing their mind of following after these different characters. But it's all dealing with mysticism and magic and witchcraft and sorcery, necromancy, and all these things. And you get brought in, and then you follow their philosophy, right? So this is a tactic, right? Unless you can come in there with swords. If swords don't do it, we're going to switch the game up and let's go with diplomacy. Let's come in another way. So this is what he was thinking to do, right? So let's go back to 2 Maccabees 13 and 18 again. It says, now when the king had taken the taste of the manliness of the Jews, he went about to take the holds by policy and marched toward Bethsura, which was a stronghold of the Jews, but he was put to flight, failed, and lost of his men. So if you're smart, you don't want to hear none of the garbage they got to say, because you know that it's just going to be words at one point, and then they're going to turn around and do to us what they did to the so-called Native American Indians, right? Everything seemed good. It came with policy. It came with Turkey. It came with all this. And then after a while, they murdered them. They massacred them. They took out the majority of our people, pushed them up into the corners within North America and Central America, and then now took their claim, took their names, right? Now they become the Native American. Now they became Gad. That's who you see at the powwow. So if you're smart, you can't trust them. You can't trust them at all. You see them coming, you either go the other way or you do exactly what Judas and them did then. Read again. And marched toward Bethsura, which is a stronghold of the Jews, but he was put to flight, failed, and lost of his men. For Judas had conveyed unto them that were in it with such things as were necessary. So he had already prepped them. He already put them in mind on how to deal and handle certain situations when they coming, right? He just didn't leave them to themselves where they can get caught off guard and seduced following their policies. Verse 21. But Rhodicus, who was in the Jews' host, disclosed the secrets to the enemies. Therefore, he was sought out. And when they had gotten him, they put him in prison. So it's always one or two or three, right, that now becomes a traitor for opportunity, like Menelaus was, right? Like Alchemist is about to be spoken of, right? These men look and say, well, because we are now taking this stance, we're not having good fortune. I want to get an opportunity, right? I want to do something. So what do? They go rat out their own people. He disclosed the secrets of what the Jews had as far as from now protecting themselves, and went and disclosed that to the enemy. And because they found out about it, they went and took him and locked him up and put him in prison, right? Verse 22, the king treated with him in Bethsura the second time, gave his hand, took theirs, departed, fought with Judas, was overcome. So in the interim of all this going on, it kind of condenses a certain time span of what actually happened. I'll read it again. The king treated with them in Bethsura the second time. So after the first time when they came, they got put to flight, right? They lost the battle, then came and they lost it then. But now coming back into Bethsura, he's now trying to approach it a different way. It says, gave his hand, took theirs, departed, right? So now this is that policy piece. They come in, you speak, shake your hand, this, that, and the third, blah, 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 and then they left. But now, just like before, when you come back, we know it's not for, just to come with friendship. Y'all coming to really take us down because you want it to be worse than your father. It says, fought with Judas, was overcome, right? So that whole soiree it wasn't in a day. It probably wasn't in a week. A time span has elapsed, but it's condensing a lot of that in a few words within this verse because it's trying to get to the heart of the matter. There's a lot of things that happen when you read the storyline. It's probably one of my best favorite storylines, and I've said it before when you deal with the Bible, as far as for something that could be put into a movie or a saga, the Maccabees. There's a lot that happened during this time with the Greeks that's not even recorded. And you could say the same thing for a lot of other periods and empires with the Persians, the Medes, or the Babylonians. Same thing with the gospel. Scripture tell you that the things that Yahushua went through and he dealt with, and his times being in the earth, the earth can't contain them. There's too many things to jot down as to what really happened, what he actually did, whether he was a spirit as an angel or whether he walked the earth. It's too many things. You can't even write them down. So it's now condensed. You're getting the concise, abridged version of what is most relevant and important for us to have in these last days. But it's going to give you enough that you can not leave nothing unturned to now be able to understand what was going on in each and every time period. Verse 23. It says, heard that Philip, who was left over the affairs in Antioch, right? So that's what we read months back in First Maccabees, the 6th chapter, that after Antiochus Epiphanes died, he knew that his son Antiochus Eupator was young, being reared up and protected and raised by Lysias. He left Philip to be the one that's over the realm or over the affairs in Antioch. Right? Antioch is like their home base. So he's kind of like the acting king. So now when Lysias and them hear about it, this now brings about some form of contention. I'm going to read it again, verse 23. Heard that Philip, who was left over the affairs in Antioch, was desperately bent, confounded, entreated the Jews, submitted himself, and swore to all equal conditions, agreed with them, and offered sacrifice, honored the temple, and dealt kindly with the place. Again, it's condensing a lot of things, because when we read this before, when you read in First Maccabees, the 6th chapter, and we noticed from the times of David, when David was on his deathbed, and he had 2 sons that was jockeying for position to be king. We're going to read that soon coming up as well. But once you have somebody who's now on the throne or who puts himself or usurps authority, anyone else who does that is looked like as an enemy of the state. And most times you're going to be taken out. They're going to be some kind of assault on you to kill you, because you don't want to have anyone who's now challenging the throne. So when this happened, when Lysias and them found out that Antiochus had left Philip there and Philip is taking care of some of the affairs back home, the people were looking at him as a king. So they could not now deal with this matter that's happening with the Jews. So they said, you know what? Let's squash this. Let's bring peace to the realm. So what did it say it did? Let's read it again. It says, heard that Philip, who was left over the affairs in Antioch, was desperately bent and confounded. So now they're considering like, yo, how are we going to handle this? Because I don't know what's going on back in Antioch. They was confused now. So they said, let's deal with this. Let's squash this. It says, entreated the Jews, submitted himself, and swore to all equal conditions. Meaning, we all cool now. We all equal people. We're not going to be at odds. We're not going to fight against you anymore. It says, agreed with them and offered sacrifice, honored the temple. The temple that was just defiled by his father, desecrated, that they now had to go and rededicate to the Most High. Now they're saying, we're in agreement. Y'all can keep y'all laws. Don't worry about anything. Matter of fact, we're going to give you sacrifices to go sacrifice in your temple. We're going to honor your temple. We're going to do all these things, and dealt kindly with the place, right? So they took away all the strongholds and things that was going on because they didn't want to fight 2 different things, because now they had to go back and deal with what was going on in Antioch. So they're trying to leave this in a good space, right? Now watch this. It says, and accepted well of Maccabeus, made him principal governor from Ptolemais unto the Gerenians, right? So they try to give him a title and say, you know what? You over this whole realm. You can have this whole realm and be over this whole realm over here, right? You're like the governor of this area right now, right? So now they're kind of really, pouring on all the gifts. But you read in Ecclesiastes, it says a gift destroyeth the heart. So sometimes you got to take those gifts as spoils, right? As things that you really don't care about, because you got to pay attention to what's really going on at hand, right? They was just fighting, and all of a sudden, over time, he has a quick change of heart, and now he's agreeing to all the things that we want to do or we were doing before they came in, right? And then he's giving him a position. He's giving him some type of a title where he's now governor over a certain region. It says in verse 35, came to Ptolemaeus, the people there were grieved for the covenants. So now he just made Maccabees governor over Ptolemaeus, but then the people themselves was upset because they was prospering for what was going on within Judea and within Israel. They didn't want us to prosper. They didn't want Maccabees to be in the position that he was in. So they was upset what they had going on. It says,
who are these people? Are they us or?
No, these is heathens. Exactly, these is heathen. So it says, came to Ptolemaeus, the people there were grieved for the covenants, for they stormed because they would make their covenants void. So they didn't want to have them to be in agreement with Lysias and them. They rather it be a dissension. They rather, because now you had the opportunity to either go and get land, to go get spoils, to go get slaves and servants, right? That's what a lot of the heathen that was round about, that was assigned or aligned with the Greeks, was always looking for, right? How can we prosper? How can we prosper from these things that's going on right now with these Jews? Verse 26, Lysias went up to the judgment seat, said as much as could be in defense of the cause, persuaded, pacified, made them well affected, return to Antioch. Thus it went touching the king's coming and departing. So as it met with Antiochus Jupiter for that instance, dealing with Maccabees around the Bethsur in Judea, that's how everything went. Now, again, in the 149th year, as we read in the beginning of that chapter, you can go into world history, you can go into Greek history and align all the events because it's going to align up, right? You'll read about Philip. You'll read about what happened with him and how he heard about what happens now that Lysias and Antiochus was trying to now also come for the throne, and he himself got afraid, right? And now, because he's going to be challenged for the throne, he doesn't have much than the Trump Antiochus' son over ascending to the throne. So there was that beef going on at that time until something now comes in. That's what we're going to read about in the 14th chapter, right? So understanding, again, this is a condensed, abridged version. Those from verse 22 all the way down, there was a lot that happened in that period of time. If you read the verse, you would think it happened in a day. No, we're talking a period of time before all of that came to fruition, and then they left and went back on their journey to Antioch, right? To try to take back the throne or to now be the sole ruler of the throne. But that's not going to happen, right? Let's jump into the 14th chapter. It says, after 3 years was Judas informed that Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, having entered by the haven of Tripolis, was with a great power and navy. So 3 years went by, right? From all this that just happened. And now this other man who was also a person who had access or had rights to the throne, he now comes out of prison, right? From Rome. He now is coming in to take the throne, right? And he's coming with his own force. Now watch what he does. Verse 2, had taken the country and killed Antiochus and Lysias, his protector, right? When it talks about Antiochus, this is Antiochus Jupiter, the son of Antiochus Epiphanes, killed him and his protector. You read the same thing in 1 Maccabees chapter 7, verse 1 on down, right? So now he has removed anyone from taking that throne or taking that position as being king. He's coming in with a great force. So a lot of times you see a lot of dissension amongst a people. Right now you see that what's going on with the war that's going on over Ukraine. They the same people, right? The Russians, the Ukrainians, right? They're all the same people. They speak the same languages or the same or a dialect of the same language. The only difference is belief. They're the same nation of people, but divided based on belief. You got some Amalekites or a lot of Amalekites that's in that region, right? And then you got some Christians that's in that region, right? And then you got some other beliefs, but they're all the same people. And one people wants to now either fight for geography to be able to defend themselves, fighting for resources as far as for oil, gas, and different certain minerals, fighting for authority to be able to take a certain region and be the top dog in that area, right? To control the seaports so that now your navy, your ships can go in and out. That's what's going on down there in Crimea. We talked about it last night. So this is the same thing. Here comes Demetrius now with his navy. You got navy, right? Then you can fight wars from off the in the waters, right? You don't even have to be on land. You can shoot missiles and bombs and things of that nature from off the waters, and that's what they had. Verse 3. Now one alchemist who had been high priest and had defiled himself willingly in the times of their mingling with the Gentiles, seeing that by no means he could save himself, nor have any more access to the holy altar. So now here's another priest, another Levite, who's defiled himself spiritually and physically, joining himself with the heathen, the Greeks, right? Because in his plunders, he messed up, and Israel did not want to have him as high priest. So now he's aligning himself with Demetrius so that he can get that position back, because it was thwarted. They're not going to allow it to happen. He could not enter into the circuit anymore. Verse 4, came to King Demetrius in the 150th year, presenting unto him a crown of gold and a palm, and also the bowls which were used solemnly in the temple. And so that day he held his peace, right? So knowing that the temple is our most holiest place, right, outside of us, the people, to use that as a tool to say we went and took this from out of the temple, you have these men that brought these gifts out of the temple and gave them to these heathen. We saw what just happened with Menelaus, how the Lord dealt with him. Alchemists wouldn't be no different, or any other man or woman that did the same type things, right? Verse 5, howbeit, having gotten opportunity to further his foolish enterprise, and being called into counsel by Demetrius, and asked how the Jews stood affected and what they intended, and he answered thereunto, right? So this man who's a traitor is one of thousands, hundreds, millions, probably, that at some point in time, someone became a traitor to his people to reveal the secrets, like this man Rhodicus did in the previous chapter. And that's what Demetrius is now asking them. What makes the Jews tick? What's their weakness? What's their strength? Right? What places should we go in to now go and assault through a war and come in? Like which area? Like he's asking them all these types of questions, right? To try to get the upper hand on Maccabees and those that was fighting with him. It says in verse 6, those of the Jews that be called Assyrians, whose captain is Judas Maccabeus. So the Assyrians were those who were fervent people who stood for the commandments, stood for the laws, right? Now, when Maccabeus and them started with Mattathias and they started their revolt against the Greeks, they met with the Assyrians. And then over time, people looked at all of them as Assyrians. It's the same thing like how when you look at the Southern Kingdom. The Southern Kingdom is called the Kingdom of the Jew, or the Southern Kingdom, Kingdom of Judah. But within the Kingdom of Judah is Benjamin and Levi. But they call that whole kingdom Jews, being short for Judah. So everyone now got that same title as being called Jews. Right now you have the whole nation being called Jews, right? Same thing here. We was all given that title as being Assyrians, right? Those who stood and fought for the laws of the Most High, for our culture and our customs at this time. So I'm gonna read it again, verse 6. Those of the Jews that be called Assyrians, whose captain is Judas Maccabeus, nourish war and are seditious, and will not let the realm be in peace. Therefore I, being deprived of mine ancestors' honor, I mean the high priesthood, am now come hither, right? So he's being labeled as a problem within the nation by one of his own, right? And he's preventing me from even keeping my own position and authority as priest, as high priest. It says in verse 8, First, verily, for the unfeigned care I have of the things pertaining to the king. And secondly, even for that I intend the good of mine own countrymen, for all our nation is in no small misery through the unadvised dealing of them aforesaid. Right? So I'm here on your behalf for the wellness of the country and for the misery that's happening within my own people because of this man and those that's with him. That's how it's being presented. Same thing when you look at the time during the times of Esther, when Haman came and he presented the Jews and Mordecai in the same vein, made us look like the criminals of the earth, right? Same thing happens to us today. We are viewed as being the criminals, the lowest of the low throughout all the earth. But when you look at the facts, you look at the numbers, we haven't done anything that pales in comparison to Esau or even some of the other nations. It's just, you know, wordplay to now get someone to now gain the upper hand. And that's what he's trying to use Demetrius for. Verse 9. Wherefore, O king, seeing thou knowest all these things, be careful for the country and our nation, which is pressed on every side according to the clemency that thou readily showest unto all. So when he says be careful for the country, what he really means is you can't turn a blind eye to this man and that group. You got to pay attention to what they're doing. You got to now shift all your focus to that because it's going to affect the well-being of your empire or the well-being of that region. So that's what Menelaus, Alchemist, was trying to do. He was trying to now get him stirred up so that he can go and focus on Maccabees, Judas Maccabees, and those that was with him. Verse 10, for as long as Judas liveth, it is not possible that the state should be quiet. So Alchemist is a murderer, right? He's a murderer and a false witness, because what he's doing is just that. He's bearing false witness against Judas Maccabees and those that is with him. And then he's also planting the seed to go and kill him for something that he didn't even do wrong. That's murder. So those are the two things that now he could be held in account. The Most High would deal with him on, right? It says, verse 11, this was no sooner spoken of him, but others of the king's friends, being maliciously set against Judas, did more incense Demetrius. So knowing that Judas had won many wars already, he was already well known, famous throughout different areas. And when he now is coming in and as an Israelite telling this to Demetrius, you had others that came in and was like, yeah, that's him. We got to get rid of him. He done took out this one. He took out this one. They fled and killed hundreds and thousands, killed our elephants, did all this stuff. This guy is a problem. We got to deal with him, right? So they piled on top of what Alchemist just told Demetrius. Verse 12, and forthwith calling Nicanor, who had been master of the elephants and making him governor over Judea, he sent him forth, right? Governors is a loose title that we see has been thrown out because Maccabees was made governor by Lysias and them, even though that they was murdered, right? So it's a position now that this man Nicanor is holding over Judea, him not being a Jew. Of course, he's a heathen, but now he's put over the realm to make sure that everything goes according to the Greek policies. But he had ultimate hate for the Jews. He had ultimate hate for our country, and they put him and set him up, right? Like I said, we're going to read this in a couple of weeks when we deal with the day of Judas, right before Purim. So we're going to go through some of the insights that it pertains to Nicanor. So I'm going to read it again. It says, and forthwith calling Nicanor, Salak, I think I skipped. No, Salak. Verse 12, and forthwith calling Nicanor, who had been master of the elephants and making him governor over Judea, he sent him forth, right? Master of the elephants, right? You know, elephants back then, when you had hand-to-hand combat, you know, to be able to have a fleet or several elephants that you can go and fight with, gave a lot of people the upper hand. And now when you are set over as a captain over the elephants, as you go in, you sitting high perched up, you can just have the elephants stamp them, and they put all different types of warlike harnesses and things on these elephants to protect them for someone trying to come with swords or bow and arrows. Man, you could wipe out, you know, a whole fleet of soldiers real quick. So he was one that had been practicing like a real person that was high up in the chain for the Grecian army, right? And he was now elevated to being a master of the elephants. Verse 13, commanding him to slay Judas and to scatter them that were with him, and to make Alchemist high priest of the great temple, right? So that was his reward, right? I'm going to get this guy Nicanor to go and kill Maccabees, and then make sure that he becomes high priest. That's what he wanted all from the beginning. He conspired, sold his countrymen out, sold out the Most High, because when they come in, they're going to try to keep the laws away from our people, right? Keep us from keeping holy days and dietary laws and so forth and so on. Sold the Most High and Yahweh out, right? And then sold those men out to now being committed to murder. Verse 14, then the heathen that had fled out of Judea from Judas came to Nicanor by flocks, thinking the harm and calamities of the Jews to be their welfare. So when they heard that Nicanor was assigned to go lead this army, to lead this fight, to go fight against Judas, they fled from all the atrocities that they was dealing with, because the Maccabees was trying to cleanse the city. They fled to go and make an alignment with Nicanor, right? That maybe this is going to be our well-being. This is going to be our fortune if Nicanor can now go and take out Maccabees. Verse 15. Now, when the Jews heard of Nicanor's coming, and that the heathen were up against them, they cast earth upon their heads and made supplication to him that hath established his people forever, and who always helped his portion with manifestation of his presence, right? So the Lord chose us to be a people forever, and we know this, right? When we know who we are as a people, that's a power that nobody else has, that we can rely. When we all come together, that we all can pray, humble ourselves, that the Most High would come at a certain point in time, it says, and make manifestation of his presence, right? By sending the angels down, sending the chariots, right? Doing certain miracles like what happened during the times of the Egyptians. That's how the Most High manifests his presence. And it's happened time and time again as testimonies throughout the Bible. And we have that to rely on, that if we humble ourselves and we come to the Lord, that he would do that for us, because we are his portion, right? That's what it says in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse, I want 9, but yeah, Deuteronomy 32 and 9. It says, for the Lord's portion is his people, right? So your portion is what's for you, right? If somebody creates a banquet and he said that portion of food right there, that plate is just for him. Nobody else has that, right? And he's not dealing with anything else that's on the table. That's how the Most High, when he created all nations, he said, this is my portion, meaning this is my people. I don't care about anything else that's out there. I don't care about those other people as a nation. I only care about Israel and Israel only, right? So when it speaks about us being able to go to him because we are people to him forever, it started way back before we were even birthed as a nation, right? This happened up in the third heavens when the Most High was already orchestrating the storyline of what was going to happen here in the earth, what he was going to create, and what was going to happen with us being the rulers of the kingdom that's going to happen in soon time, forever and ever. That was already known. So that's why we are his favorite, right? His peculiar people, as he describes it also in Deuteronomy, that no one else can now make that claim to call upon the Most High and he come to their defense. The Most High don't come to no one else's defense like he will do for the children of Israel. Verse 16. So at the commandment of the captain, they removed straightways from thence, and came near unto them at the town of Dasar. Now Simon, Judas's brother, had joined battle with Nicanor, but was somewhat discomfited through the sudden silence of his enemies, right? So he expected more from Nicanor, and he didn't see, what he expected him to come with for that fight that he had with Nicanor. So he was a bit confused. He was a bit perplexed as to what was going on. It says, verse 18, nevertheless, Nicanor, hearing of the manliness of them that were with Judas and the courageousness that they had to fight for their country, durst not try the matter by sword. Same thing that happened in the last chapter. Now they're going to try it by policy. Now they want to try it by diplomacy. Let's sit down and break bread and talk this thing through, right? We don't want to come with aggression. It says in verse 19, wherefore he sent Posidonius and Theodotus and Mattathias to make peace, right? So now he's sending certain ambassadors to go and have a sit down with Maccabees to now come to agreement that they would be able to sit and have a talk face to face. Verse 20. So when they had taken long advisement thereupon, and the captain had made the multitude acquainted therewith, and it appeared that they were all of one mind, they consented to the covenants. So after back and forth, after coming to agreements on where they're going to meet, how many people going to be there, right? All these types of things. You ain't got to worry about this. We may give you, something to hold as a ransom just to make sure you have all these discussions and terms. Then they said, okay, cool. We can have a sit down, right? Verse 21, and appointed a day to meet and together by themselves. And when the day came and the stools were set for either of them, Judas placed armed men ready in convenient places, lest some treachery should be suddenly practiced by the enemies. So they made a peaceable conference, right? So he was a bit on point. Can't trust your enemy. Can't trust these guys, man. Especially this one, because he had ultimate hate for the Jews. So he had to be on guard, even though they made an agreement to even have the sit down by themselves in a certain place. He had to go and strategically say, y'all go wait over there in the bushes. Y'all go wait behind that, that area over there. They're going to come over here, make sure we got people behind them. All of this just in case anybody did something slick, right? Verse 23. Now Nicanor abode in Jerusalem and did no hurt, but sent away the people that came flocking unto him, right? So now time has passed. They didn't have to sit down. So it's saying that now he's dwelling there in Jerusalem with them, right? And those that left the city to come to him, thinking that he was just going to go and wipe out Judas, he sent them away. Y'all get out of here, man. I'm not dealing with y'all right now. Y'all gonna mess this whole thing up, right? So he sent them away and said, listen, we're going to kind of just dwell here and everything going to be peaceful. That's how Esau likes to deal. He uses peace as a tool before they actually come and take you out, right? I think it's Jeremiah 8:11, where it says peace, peace, but there is no peace. There's no peace when it comes to Esau and his rulership, right? No peace at all. So here it seems that everything is cool, everything is calm, but they said the storm is coming, right? So it says it again. Now Nicanor abode in Jerusalem and did no hurt, but sent away the people that came flocking unto him. And he would not willingly have Judas out of his sight, for he loved the man from his heart, right? So it wasn't that he had, like he was a brother. It's he respected him. A lot of times you're reading, sometimes you're reading the scriptures and you'll see in real world activity where you could be at odds fighting against somebody, but another king or another ruler somewhere has been well respected for what they've done, right? So it's not that you love him like you want him to be a brother and you don't want to wish no ill on him, but you respect him for his manliness and how he's a warrior and he's a soldier, and he was just observing him, just watching him every movement. Like how people watch celebrities. They go into a certain mall and everybody just standing there with their cell phones, just watching their every movement. They eat, they drink, They go to the bathroom just like everybody else, but everybody's watching at every moment. That's how he was doing with Judas, right? He was in awe of this man, especially when the Most High is coming to his defense and fighting. He wants to see everything how he ticks, right? It says in verse 24, so like 25, he prayed him also to take a wife and to beget children. So he married, was quiet, and took part of this life. Meaning, as he's there in Jerusalem, he like, yo, go live your life, man. You ain't got to worry about us. We're not going to do anything. Go have a family. Everything is cool. I done sent away my people. We're going to build businesses. We're going to have all things, as normal people live. Back then, it was the Greek dream, right? Everything is cool. That's how it's always been. It seems cool at the time, right? You go a period of time, you live your life, you get a job, get some kids, get a dog, right? You go on vacation here and there, and everything just seems all hunky-dory. And all of a sudden, while you at peace, while things is calm, they're already plotting. They're setting up certain traps. They're setting up certain things to catch you unawares that you can't see, right? Let me read this in Jeremiah chapter 11. One of my go-to. Jeremiah chapter 11. And verse 19. I'm going to start at 18. Jeremiah chapter 11 and verse 18. It says, and the Lord have given me knowledge of it, and I know it. Then they showeth me their doings. But I was like a lamb or an ox that is brought to the slaughter, and I knew not that they had devised devices against me, saying, let us destroy the tree with the fruit thereof, and let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name may no more be remembered, right? So that's how we have been as a people, right? I seen the clip right before the Sabbath service, the clip that Elder Zaquan sent in the group chat, and how it was going throughout history, how they have plotted, right, and done exactly this, devised certain devices against us as a people to destroy us mentally, spiritually, physically. And most of us have no clue, right? Like he said that they had devised devices against me, right? But he didn't know it. He was like a lamb or an ox, a dumb animal. An animal is going to get led to the slaughter, and his eyes see that he's going into the slaughterhouse. His eyes see the guy with the sword, with the hatchet, right? But he's still led to go to his destruction. That's how we have been as a people, and that's what they have been doing, devising these devices and tactics and tools and medias and books and all these different things to get us to be destroyed. Religion and alcohol and drugs and all these different things to get us to self-implode, right? That's what happens, especially when you put your guard down. You don't pay attention to what they're doing. You're not seeing what they're doing behind closed. They're seeing what you do, right? They pay attention. They come in. They check us out. They music. They take it and make it their own and give crumbs. And they have certain people who now become a part of the establishment and do this, and everything seems fine. And then they give them influential things to do. Wear all red and put the hand over your eye and put the diamond up, and it all represents, going back to, Horus. It's a spiritual thing. It kind of feeds you with a lot of garbage because you're ignorant. You don't know what's really going on. You haven't done the history. You haven't checked out what happened in ancient times and how they've stolen from those things and now brought it up to today, but just put it over with a different image, like Mickey Mouse with the wand, right? You don't pay attention. You think it's harmless until it bites you in the behind, until they come and they take you out at the last moment when you ain't paying attention. That's what has been happening, and it's a spirit that's in them as a people. So when we go back and we read 2 Maccabees chapter 14, he's having them put his guard down, right? Go live your life, have a family. Don't worry about us, right? Verse 26, but Alchemists, perceiving the love that was betwixt them and considering the covenants that were made, came to Demetrius and told him that Nicanor was not well affected toward the state, for that he had ordained Judas, a traitor to his realm, to be the king's successor, right? So now he's continuing on with the lies, right? Because he's trying to push Nicanor to work faster, right? But Nicanor didn't initially want to go and try the matter by force, because he knew that Judas had already taken out a whole bunch of other people. I'll do it a different way. And Alchemist didn't like that. So he's now going back and reporting like, yo, this guy's over here chilling in Jerusalem. He chilling. He going out to dinner with Judas Maccabees. He talking about he going to be new king. What? New king, right? So now they got to come and check what Nicanor is doing. Verse 27. Then the king, being in a rage and provoked with the accusations of the most wicked man, wrote to Nicanor, signifying that he had much displeased with the covenants and commanding him that he should send Maccabeus prisoner in all haste unto Antioch. So it's like if you ever watch certain movies or TV shows where somebody's an undercover and they've been undercover for a year or two. And sometimes they battle with, you know, that person that they had to change into. I forget, Lawrence Fishburne did Deep Cover. I think Omar Epps did another one. I forget the name of it. And over time, your directors and your lieutenants, and then they come like, yo, what's going on? What's taking you so long? Why haven't you closed the case? Right? I think you are now almost getting too entwined with this role that you're playing. He's like, yo, give me a little bit more time. Give me a little bit more time. I'm gaining his confidence. Like he's putting his guard down. I'm like right-hand man right now. I'm getting closer and closer to him. No, you got a week. You got a week to get this done or else I'm pulling you, right? So that's what's now somewhat going on with Nicanor. Nicanor is trying to situate himself to be closer and closer to Judas to get his guard down so that he can do it, but Alchemist is pushing it. Sometimes you get caught up with words and you see love and they see the same thing with David and they think it's something more than it is. He respected the hell out of Judas, right? And that's what it was. And now he's trying to put his guard down and he's being forced to move at an accelerated rate. Verse 28. When this came to Nicanor's hearing, he was much confounded in himself and took it grievously that he should make void the articles that were agreed upon, the man being in no fault. So now when he sees this letter coming from Demetrius, he like, damn, I done set all these things in motion and I done been here for a while. And the same way that Pontius Pilate looked at Yahushua when he said, yo, I see no fault in this man. The man wasn't reckless. Judas wasn't a reckless individual. He wasn't like how most people go out here and just want to just take opportunity for themselves. He was defending his own country as he should. Yahushua wasn't doing anything crazy. So when they said, listen, murder him, crucify him, Pilate didn't see anything specific that should have crucified Yahushua. But it didn't mean that Pilate still was a wicked individual, right? Based on that situation, he just said, listen, I'm trying to find what we talking about here. Same thing here. Nicanor done been with him for a while and observing him, and he didn't see him moving in a certain way like how he does or how other people did, right? So now everything got to accelerate. Now he got to switch up real quick. Verse 20. But because there was no dealing against the king, he watched his time to accomplish this thing by policy. Notwithstanding, when Maccabeus saw that Nicanor began to be churlish unto him, and that he entreated him more roughly than he was wont, perceiving that such sour behavior came not of good, he gathered together not a few of his men and withdrew himself from Nicanor. So now he had to change the plan, accelerate what was going on, and now he began to be churlish to him. All those agreements, you just live your life, we're not going to bother you, all that went out the door. And Maccabeus was able to observe his character, observe his movement. The way he spoke changed. He's like, I was waiting on this. I knew this was going to come. I was prepared for him to change a heart like this. Could never trust him. So what did he do? He separated himself from him. Right? Yo, let's roll. This guy here, nah, he's not right. Right? Sometimes, like, we always want to, give the benefit of the doubt. Right? No, he just had a bad day. Everybody has bad days. It'll be better tomorrow. Sometimes you got to say, look, man, when I know that what kind of spirit the Most High put it in him, nah, I'm not trusting it, right? You got to be mindful for yourself, your soul, your spirit, and the liveness of your people. or the protection of your people when it comes to times like this. Right? This ain't no game. So he bounced. Verse 31. But the other, knowing that he was notably prevented by Judas's policy, came into the great and holy temple and commanded the priests that were offering their usual sacrifices to deliver him the man. So once Judas bounced and he seen the spirit change in Judas as well, he now went on the offense and entered into the temple. Everybody always wants to go into the temple because they know that that is a sacred place for us. They know that that's our sore spot. So he now goes into the temple and makes demands that they have to deliver Judas or else. It says, and when they swear that they could not tell where the man was whom he sought, he stretched out his right hand toward the temple and made an oath in this manner: if you will not deliver me, Judas, as a prisoner, I will lay this temple of God even with the ground, and I will break down the altar and erect a notable temple unto Bacchus. Right? So he put a threat out: deliver him or else everything is going to get destroyed. And I'm going to lay it to the ground. I'm going to raise it to the ground. Raise, R-A-S-E, meaning destroy and bring it down to the dirt. And then built a whole nother temple unto Bacchus. Right? I was somewhere and I was walking by somewhere and I seen a bar or something like that. And it was called Bacchus. I was like, damn, even a bar. Somebody said, yo, where we going to go out? We're going to go out for drinks. Where we going to go? Bacchus. Now, ignorantly, you don't realize what that name symbolizes, that is dealing with a pagan god, right? You don't know, and you in there drinking and having a good time, and the spirits is coming in on you, right? Because you don't realize that everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual first before it's physical, before it's carnal. And then certain spirits come on you or certain things. That's why sometimes it's good to be astute in a lot of things, right? You don't want to be ignorant about anything, right? You want to at least be cognizant, aware of some things so that you can separate yourself from them, right? And I seen that, I was like, dang, man, if the scriptures had not told me about some of these things already, who knows who knows what kind of person I would be right now. But we see this in the scriptures, and we now know that that's a pagan god that they worshiped back then. And the names change over time. It says in verse 34, after these words he departed. Then the priests lifted up their hands toward heaven and besought him that was ever a defender of their nation, saying in this manner: Thou, O Lord of all things, who has need of nothing, wast pleased that the temple of thine habitation should be among us. That's what you read about back in 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, the 9th chapter, when King Solomon, when he first built and dedicated the temple to the Most High after his father David couldn't do it. And the Most High even first forewarned them, don't think that that temple is a place that's really housing me, right? It's just a figure or a covenant between us and the Most High to offer sacrifices to him. But it's not like how these other nations do, where they have these false gods in the temple. That's not the real dwelling place of the temple, but it is a token between us and the Lord, where we go and we offer sacrifice and do forms of worship. So they're now reiterating on just that. It says in verse 36, therefore now, O holy Lord of all holiness, keep this house ever undefiled, which lately was cleansed, and stop every unrighteous mouth. So it was just lately cleansed during the time of the rededication of the altar, or Hanukkah, right? We just kept Hanukkah a couple months back, right? So that's when it says it was just lately cleansed and stop every unrighteous mouth, speaking about Nicanor, who just laid down the threat to destroy the temple. Verse 37, now was there accused unto Nicanor one Razes, one of the elders of Jerusalem, a lover of his countrymen, and a man of very good report, who for his kindness was called a father of the Jews, right? So now while he's there in the temple, someone comes and says, you know, like what wicked men do, they try to go and make an example out of someone who's close to you, someone who's reputable, right? So they now had this man Razzies who was well respected, well favored by the children of Israel, right? He was like a father figure to them as a people. Today's time, you would say he was an OG, right? To them back then. So now he's going to use him to make an example, right? So it says in verse 38, for in the former times, when they mingled not themselves with the Gentiles, he had been accused of Judaism and did boldly jeopard his body and life with all vehemency for the religion of the Jews, right? So that verse right there, you know, some people will look at it and be like, Judaism. Damn, I thought we didn't deal with religion, right? I thought, you know, we don't deal with what Amalek and them deal with, because they, you know, they got the Kabbalah, they got all these other different books and points of references, and that's all under the umbrella of Judaism. So if you read this, you'd be like, well, dang, that's what we're supposed to be dealing with. But you got to be careful, because the Bible speaks about religion, like when you read it in the book of James, it speaks about pure religion, right, and undefiled. So someone reads that and they say, well, I thought we don't do religion, but right there in the Bible, it talks about religion. Religion is just dealing with practices and principles, right? Different principles and righteous things as it pertains to the laws, statutes, and commandments. People can take words like this word Judaism is really just aligning with the same laws, commandments that the Most High gave to Moses to give to the children of Israel, or Adam to give to them that was back then. It's the same thing. They have now taken this name and now made it something of what it's not. It's like taking the shield of David, right? And now I'm polluting it into something that it's not, right? People do that all the time. Like I said, you got gangs who now will take certain images, or who will take the Bible. Because Christianity and Catholicism and all this uphold the Bible, what happened? You want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, they just took that and ran with it and polluted it and defiled it. Same thing they did with the Bible as a whole. They try to change the words up in the Bible to pollute it, to defile it, to change the understanding of the meaning. This Judaism here is just speaking about trying to keep the customs of the people as it is written. Because if you want to know and say, well, what does that Judaism mean? Then you got to go right back into the Bible, right? Where in the Bible does it allow that aligns principles that they do now with modern day Judaism? It's not there, right? You can't find those principles. You can't find where it says to curl your hair a certain way and put the yarmulke on. You can't find that in the scriptures. Where did it come from? That's man-made. So that is not what it is that we read here. It's just aligning with the laws, statutes, and commandments. So I'm gonna read it again, verse 38. For in the former times, when they mingled not themselves with the Gentiles, he had been accused of Judaism. So just like during Daniel's time or any other time, when there's a certain, you know, vibration or energy that the ruling empire wants everybody to follow, and you don't follow it, you're going to stand out. Daniel was told that he couldn't pray to the Most High God, but he did it. He stood out. And that's where they went and put him in the lion's den, right? Same thing with the other three holy brothers. They was thrown into the fire, into the pit, right? So when you don't follow the trend, you don't follow the masses, you stand out. And what happens? You now at times will be made an example of. So this is what it's talking about. It says, and did boldly jeopard his body and life with all vehemency for the religion of the Jews. Religion, again, being the principles and statutes of our nation, right? That's what he dedicated his life to, put his life on the line. He's standing in the front when someone wanted to confront anything that pertains to our nation. That's what he did, Razzies, right? It says in verse 39, so Nicanor, willing to declare the hate that he bare unto the Jews, sent above 500 men of war to take him, right? 500 men for this one man, not two, not five, but 500 he sent to the city to just go get this one man, Razzies. Why? Because of the hatred that he had towards us as a people and anybody who was being deemed reputable. So this goes back to what we was reading about his encounters with Judas Maccabees, right? It wasn't that he had real love for him. He had a perpetual hatred, right? We see this now about his actions and what he's doing. It says, for he thought by taking him to do the Jews much hurt, right? Meaning that he would give in. If we take this guy who's a upstanding individual and he's going to go and try to make an example of him, we'll give in and say, there go Judas right there. We'll bring him to you. Don't harm this man. If you want him so that you don't harm the temple, you don't harm this man or anyone else, we'll give you Judas. That's what they thought. Verse 41. Now, when the multitude would have taken the tower and violently broken into the outer door and bade that fire should be brought to burn it, he being ready to be taken on every side fell upon his sword, right? So as they coming after him and they trying to break down the tower and they looking to burn it, he's like, look, I don't want to give myself into their hands. Same thing that King Saul did when we was reading the Samuels. When he tried to fall on his sword and he missed and it didn't kill him. Then he talked to his armor bearer there and said, listen, slay me, right? Which he did. And then when the armor bearer slayed King Saul, he killed himself. And then the Edomite came and lied and said that he did it, right? So he didn't want to fall victim into the hands of the heathen. Razzies is saying the same thing because, you know, he was going to be put on display. They was going to torture him. They was going to do all kinds of things. He says, I'd rather just die and not fall into their hands. Verse 42, choosing rather to die manfully than to come into the hands of the wicked, to be abused otherwise than beseemed his noble birth, right? So he didn't want to go through that, man. Who wants to go through that, right? You have to have a charge or a task by the Most High that says that you have to do this like Yahushua did. Yahushua had to bear that burden. He didn't want to go through it himself. He even prayed to the Father to remove that cup from him if it was going to be the Father's will. But Razzies is like, look, I'd rather die than to fall into the hands of these heathen, and they have all kind of things going on with me, man, to defile my name. People looking at me, all kind of things going on, and done cut me up, took my tongue, all kind of things that they do when they have people like that as a hostage to make an example of. Verse 43, but missing his stroke through haste, the multitude also rushing within the doors, he ran boldly unto the wall and cast himself down manfully among the thickest of them. So when he went to go fall on his sword, because they was coming, he did it in haste and he missed. He didn't get any vital area that would cause him to bleed out or to die. So then he was like, I got to bounce because they're going to grab me up. Then he ran to a wall and jumped to go land on the thickest of them. You know, they got weapons and swords and they probably try to slice him and dice him as he's about to fall on him. Verse 44. But they quickly give him back, and a space being made, he fell down into the midst of the void place. Just like when you go to a concert and people do a stage dive and you expect them to hold you up. Rather, you fall on the people to break your fall. But they all move out the way and you fall flat on the ground. So him coming off the wall, thinking that he's going to dive into the crowd that got the spikes and all of that, they all moved out the way and he fell right down flat onto the earth, right? Or to the spot where they had separated themselves. Verse 45. Nevertheless, while there was yet breath within him, being inflamed with anger, he rose up. So the adrenaline was running. Sometimes when you get shot, you get a limb cut off, what have you, you probably bleeding out, but you don't feel no pain because the adrenaline is running in you, right? For a short period of time, all that's numb, right? So now, whether it's through fear or through anger, that's what's going on. So that's what was happening with him, right? Through the anger, he's like, yo, he just got up at his last breath, it says, and though his blood gushed out like spouts of water and his wounds were grievous, yet he ran through the midst of the throng and standing upon a steep rock, when as his blood was now quite gone, he plucked out his bowels. So all this is now gushing out. Imagine that. Like almost all his blood is gushing out and he still got the adrenaline running in him that's allowing him to continue going. Sometimes you see it on the news or in real life. If you had, you know, unfortunate times where this happened, where somebody gets shot and they bleeding out, they pass out, right? They're not dead yet. They passed out, right? Because you start to lose consciousness. Your blood pressure starts to drop, and then you lose consciousness. But with him, his adrenaline and the rage was running so rampant that he just kept going with his last breath, and blood is spurting out and everything. And he went, and it says, and taking them, it says, I'm read 46. And when as his blood was now quite gone, he plucked out his bowels, and taking them in both his hands, he cast them among the throng, and calling upon the Lord of life and spirit to restore him those again, and thus he died. So he took out his bowels, his guts, and everything that was in it, threw it on him. Right?
That wasn't his reproductive system that he took out. That was something out of his stomach.
Right. Because remember, he tried to fall on his sword, and he cut it, and then he fell. And now once you fall, you know, it opens up the wound even more.
Oh, okay.
So now he's running, and blood is going out. So now he just, you know, out of rage, just goes and like that. And now it splatters. It's like that last ultimate sign to now go and just splatter them. Like you know, when stuff gets, you're like, oh man, what the heck is this? And he did that. And as he about to die, call upon the name of the Most High, that knowing that the Most High can revive him either at that moment, or he'll bring him back in the reincarnation, and he can get revenge at a later time. That's why it says, calling upon the Lord of life and spirit to restore him those again, and thus he died. Like, I want to be there when I can get my revenge on these guys. I want to see Nicanor if I can, or these guys who hit his soldiers. I want to be there and to get that revenge. But for right now, he's going to give up the spirit. Right? So that was the, you know, a man of note, of notable worthiness at that time, you know, who had his testimony written in the scriptures about what was going on. And he's probably one of a lot, right? We had the woman with her sons. There's a lot of accounts like this. The woman who was, you know, who had circumcised a child, one who was keeping the Sabbath day. We have some counts in the scriptures that you read about, like, yo, that's crazy, that's messed up. How could they do this? And then you fast forward, and then you look at a lot of the things that has happened to us in the last 400 years, and you're like, man, the heck? And then it's still happening today, right? And now they're trying to erase the accountability and the liability of them doing some of these things, right? Some through policy, and others just through just brute force strength. So in reading the Maccabees, we see that, again, it's before America. This goes before Rome. This is even before the Greeks, going back to their fatherhood. The man Esau himself had an ultimate perpetual hatred for his brother Jacob, and it never stopped. It always continued on. So we're not talking about 400 years. We're not talking about 600 years. We're not talking about 1,000 years. We're talking about thousands of years of hatred that they had against us as a people, right? For no real cause. Thousands of years of ultimate perpetual hatred, and it's still continuing this day. All right. So that concludes today's Sabbath service lesson. Next week, we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapters 9 and 10. Just confirm it. Correct. 2 Samuel chapters 9 and 10. And then Sunday night, tomorrow night, will be the new moon, right? We'll be keeping the new moon service tomorrow night, right? And as mentioned before, March 3rd is the day of Judas. 4th and 5th are the days of Purim, right? That's almost a week, 2 weeks from now, that weekend. Now, before we close out, I wanted to show this clip that somebody sent. I didn't put it in the group chat, so I just want to show this real quick. Give me 1 second here. Hopefully I didn't Get rid of it. I think I did. Bear with me 1 second. All right, here we go.
I was helping my daughter study last night for the Virginia Standards of Learning exam, so I recognize that's above your concern, your level of authority, but I didn't know who to raise my concern to because usually I cook and my husband assists my children with their homework, but I was feeling a little under the weather, so we reversed roles last night, and I saw that what they were teaching my child was that the status of early Africans was unknown and that they were probably slaves or servants. As a HBCU graduate who knows better, although I lived in Prince William County, I attended Thomas Jefferson High School, so I was not a product of Prince William County schools, but it's one thing to say, we're not going to cover that. It's another thing to lie to my child and say that their history is unknown and that they were probably servants or slaves before they came to America. And I feel like part of this miseducation is the reason for our current country's climate. And the fact that if my child gives an answer other than what's on that paper, that she's considered wrong. So how do I educate my child and teach her that her history is powerful, that her history is amazing, and what her classmates are learning or what they carry with them when they become senior leaders, executives, and feel that it's beneath them to promote someone above them because their ancestors were just slaves or servants. Right now, I'm working in the CIA as the chief of a group within the Diversity and Inclusion Office, and I'm fighting these battles every day to change minds, to change hearts, to change unconscious bias, because they're not unconscious, they're taught at this age to our children and their classmates. And I don't know what can be done about that, but I figured I'd start with you all. Because I have 3 babies, 9, 10, and 11, in Prince William County schools who are being shaped for their future.
Who was she talking to?
She was at a
School meeting?
yes. And what was interesting, because I had to deal with the same thing, especially when my older 2 were younger, and they have a curriculum, and we know that the information is wrong, but you can teach your child right that this is what it is, but then they have to go and put the wrong answer on the test or in the paper to get a good grade, right? So that's what she was saying. How do I teach them? But if I teach them the right way and put that in there, it's going to get a wrong answer. Hence why a lot of people just say, screw that, I'll homeschool my child, right? Because if I send them to the institution, they're going to now miseducate my children. not so much even just miseducating my children, the other students that's there, right, of other nationalities, they're going to be indoctrinated with this, and they're going to treat us a certain way. They're going to think that we are those people, not the real Jews, not the real Israelites, not the kings and queens that the Most High said we are. We're the ones who are the downtrodden. This is who we should be, right? This is how we are looked at across the world to a certain extent, right? So she's like, well, what do we do, right? And we know, like we read in St. John 15:3, where when the Lord puts that, when you read the word of the Most High will give you clarity. But right now, you know, it's interesting. She works for the CIA. You know, when you read in Genesis, the 49th chapter, and you go into Judah being, you know, a lion's whelp, and he's going to be at, you know, at their neck, right? And you look at how the crumbs have been given to Israel, mainly even Judah, to now accelerate into like some of the highest positions. But now you got a person who's in the CIA who's exhibiting Ezekiel 9:4. Right? When you read Ezekiel 9:4, it's the people who are speaking out against about the abominations and the things that are done in the midst thereof. Because this has been going on for 10 years, that they're trying to change history. They're purposely changing history, changing and altering how people are viewed, right? To get away from accountability and liability, like we mentioned last night. So if you can change the textbooks, and the new generation that's coming in, they won't think about that stuff. They won't even know about that stuff, right? You got people who are celebrities now. Was it Tom Hanks? He was like, yo, I never knew about the Black Wall Street. How is it that I never knew about Black Wall Street? Because those were certain events that were swept under the rug, right? To be able to say the first bomb dropped on a so-called American soil was Tulsa, Oklahoma. That they dropped the bomb on one of their own. First time it happened in American history was in Tulsa. You move that to the side, because they're going to say, well, why would you do that? What did they do? What was so wrong that a bomb, or they had to go and destroy that whole area, right? And then you see, oh man, that was just wicked. They didn't do nothing. We told them to be separate. We told them we can't drink water with us, you can't go to school with us, and they go and do just that, and they prosper, and we destroy it. And that was just one of at least 7, 8, 10 times over that they did the same thing in Florida and Carolina. Same thing was being matriculated all throughout the United States, where we was establishing ourselves. They destroyed it and brushed it under the table. You got to fish on the internet to find some of these types of things. You got to you got to get through all the madness to get to the actual information when it comes out. So that's what a part of, you know, the magic wand to kind of like just blank it out. It's like I did with technology, and they got some of these video tools to go and do arts and things on certain laptops and things. And there's a thing called the magic wand. And in the magic wand, you can just erase it out. You can just change it, alter it. You got a picture there. Oh, you look a little flabby. I can take that out. I can take that out and make it look like it's something totally different. That's what indirectly in the background society has become. But again, like it says in Jeremiah 11:19, if you don't pay attention, if you don't watch, like Yahushua said, watch ye therefore. If you don't pay attention to what's going on, you're going to get caught up, right? You're going to now invite those spirits or invite that normalcy into you, and then you just go about it like nothing really happened. So that's just like, you know, we send each other these things on a group chat. That's like one of so many. And then you sit back and you look and you walk outside. You're like, yo, what? Like, it seemed normal. It's like everything is just going on every day. You go to Subway, you go get your gas, you know, you go into the game, you go in a restaurant. It seemed normal. But all this is still happening behind closed doors. But for the remnant, last scripture, for the remnant, this is what we hope to continue to be a part of. Revelations 11:11. Revelations 11:11, it says, and after 3 days and a half, right, which is symbolic of our curse, our captivity, right, as a people that we suffered in modern day Babylon, It says, after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them. Spirit of life is the commandments, the laws, the fruits of the spirit, the history, the prophecies. We are now getting all of that knowledge into our minds, right? It enters into us, and it says, and they stood upon their feet. Right now, even the sister, she's not lying flat because she's speaking out. Brothers, other people just like her. She might be sitting on her behind, kneeling. She's not standing yet, because the only way you're going to be able to stand is when the spirit of life enters into you. So one would pray and hope that she would pass a camp. Pray and hope that she gets a TikTok clip of a camp, or a YouTube video of a camp, or a flyer somewhere on a bus seat, or somewhere that now jogs the mind, so that the spirit of life can enter into her or him or them, right? It says, and they stood up and they stood upon their feet. Why is it symbolic? Because when you read it in the book of Isaiah, it speaks about that we have been laid out at the corners, right? We are left unconscious. We don't know who we are. Even though we are standing up, we are laying down flat. We're falling out. We fell for everything. Every religion, every drug, every miseducation, every politic, right? We've fallen for it all. And now we just dying, laying spiritually dead, like it tells you in Ezekiel, the valley of dry bones, and we haven't gotten up. We don't get up until the spirit comes in you. When you know who you are, you know who the Most High in Christ is, you know what is required of you, the keeping of the commandments, and you know the judgment that's coming. That's when you'll be able to stand. Because you can say, I know the commandments, but you don't know what now is following it. You don't know what's required of you. Then that's going to leave a gap. Then you're going to be frustrated when you watch the news and you see the things that's going on. Where's going to be the hope of our coming? What's going to be the hope of our salvation? The Most High and Yahweh Shai has shown us the signs of it's getting closer and closer, right? As things get worse, that's a sign that it's getting closer and closer. It's not for our despair. Sure, we're angry. Sure, we feel empathy to those who are still suffering for what's going on. Sympathy, because you've gone through some of the same things. But the Most High is showing you that, listen, it's about to hit that point where it's going to be all done. But we got to stand up and continue to stand in the spirit, that we don't fall back to where we was before. Asking the questions. What do you, like, we go to them, we ask for reparations. For what? Why? Why do you ask for something that was already given to you from the people who stole it from you? It doesn't make sense. You lose somebody come and break in your house and squat in your house, and you stand out on the front lawn talking about something. Can I come in and get something to drink? Hell no. Get the hell out. That's how we become so docile and so just, subservient to everything it is. We got to be able to now stand upon our feet. It says, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. Like Edgar Hoover said, the biggest threat to this establishment is us when we stand up for ourselves, when we unite and stand up for ourselves, especially under this. Great fear has fallen upon some people already because they understand and see what's going on. Don't think that Amalek this past year just says, I ain't paying attention to what they're saying. No, great fear is falling upon them. Hence why they got campaigns now all over the doggone social media to try to stand and unite with Amalek, because they're seeing that their time is now running short because the lies are now being pulled or being called out. So make sure we watch, share information, right? With the rest of us who pay not all on board with so many different things, band together spiritually and then carnally, uniting with one another, like we did during the times in Nehemiah, right? Separate ourselves from the heathen. You can't separate yourself right now physically to a certain extent, but you can do it spiritually. All right. So again, Most High's will, everyone was fed with something. If it was just an appetizer, a full course meal, a dessert, whatever it is, Lord's will, you are spiritually fed. Always give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High in Christ, to watch over, protect, heal our nation, to continue to send the angels to minister unto us, to give us the fruits of the Spirit, to give us those gifts that we read about in Corinthians. Also to thank him for allowing us to be into this truth, right? We did nothing to be here. It was all a choice by the Most High and Yahushua to invite us into the elect. And now it's up to us to stay here, to make sure that our seat is assured. All right? So enjoy the rest of the Sabbath day. Stay in the Spirit. Pray for one another. I know some of us are going through certain things, but watch out, watch over, pray for one another. And Lord's will, we're here to see each other during the new moon service tomorrow night. And we endure until the end. All right? So with that, I say Shalom, Yasha'Allah. Stay tuned for the closing prayers. Kum Yasha'Allah.
Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ashira Natalanawa, Par Yahagabin, Thawada Amun, La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ath, Yasha'Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, or the Most High, in the name of Christ, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Imadu upon you, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Closing prayer. Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Baba Kushai, Shammai, Lanawa, Aitha, Yum Yun, Aitha, Shalat, Mayaka Allah, Wahalahayim, Tazawadakim, La, Shemaiah, Barak, Rapah, Magun, Wahakazayat, Banya, Yasha'Allah, Washalat, Lanawa, Rabium, Kakama, Rabium, Da'ith, Rabium, Bayana, Rabium, Sabalomba, Rabium, Amawan, Rabium, Aqua, Rabium, Ahabium, Rabium, Haganah, Rokhanaya, Wasalat, Kal, Kata Ayamnawa, Laha Akyum, Wa Aktuath, Wa Yasha'Allah, Thum Yad, Wa Iwalam, Bahasham, Yahawashai, so Wada Amun. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers of angels to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel, and send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins for the brothers and sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'Allah, Wahabiyah Saparium, Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allahaynawa, Yahweh, Achad. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us and Israel and the house of books or schools. In Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one power. Again,
Say Shah Shabbat, Shalom Yashala. Enjoy the rest of the day. Peace.
Oh, wow.